Hey everybody, it's Rod with PhotoFair coming back at you with another video. Today I want to talk about another reflex telephoto. You may remember I talked about the Tamron SP 500 f8 kind of favorably in a video a while back, and you can check that down in the description for the link to that if you're interested. This is probably the best reflex telephoto lens really you can get, aside from buying something exotic like the Zeiss Miritar or something like that. And I still find this lens to be pretty good for a mirror lens. I talk about all the pros and cons of mirror lenses because they're very imperfect devices, but they can be fun. So that was that lens. Today, I decided to take a chance on a Samyang lens. They stopped making these 4 or 5 years ago, but this is an 800 f8. So the same f-stop as that Tamron, but an 800 millimeter focal length lens. I wanted to see if this lens was any good. I watched other reviewers, and they had mixed reviews. Some of them really liked it. Some of them said it was garbage. I wanted to see, is it really garbage or not? Because the idea of an 800 with an f-stop of f8, that's actually pretty good. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, Rod, f8, that's not very exotic. But understand, when you get to 800 millimeter, and you look at what Canon and Nikon and Sony make, their top lenses that are $12,000 are f5.6, because f5.6 is really fast for an 800. It becomes almost impossible to make anything faster at 800 because the thing would literally weigh, 100 pounds, and that's just not feasible. So the longer the focal length of your lens gets, the lower the expectation is for what is a fast f-stop. At 600 millimeter, f4 is world-class speed. At 50 millimeter, f4 is throw that thing in the garbage. What the heck is that? So it's it's all kind of relative. So at 800, f8, you're just one stop away from exotic in terms of specs. Now I'm going to stop right there. So you guys can stop typing in the comments. This is not a world-class lens by any measure. This Samyang 800 f8 is only mediocre sharp, which for a mirror lens is pretty good because mirror lenses are notorious for not being that sharp. The contrast is awful, worse than the Tamron for contrast. And so you really got to do post work with these. If you're shooting JPEG straight out of camera, turn the video off, go watch one of my other videos. These are not good for JPEG straight out of camera. These are designed for folks that are going to do a little post work. So I was genuinely impressed with this 800 millimeter lens. Optically, for a mirror lens, it wasn't bad. I'd say it's still a mark below that Tamron, but I mean, it's 40, 60% more reach at the same f-stop, and I would say pretty close on sharpness when you get it sharp. The problem with this lens is it's a mirror lens on steroids. And if you watch that other video, I talk about how at 500 millimeter, you need to use a shutter speed of at least 1,000th of a second because they're notorious for camera shake, for having vibrations and that sort of thing that affect, and make the normal rule of 1 over your focal length is really not effective. You really got to go an extra stop or maybe even 2 stops faster on the shutter speed than you normally would for that focal length. They're just notorious. They're really hard to hold still, and vibrations just are magnified to the nth degree. And at 800, it's just that much worse. It's 16 times the magnification of a 50 millimeter lens. So I had a hard time. I mean, my keeper rate with that thing was like 20%. And, even on a tripod, it's less than 50%. The thing is just hard to focus. The focus on this lens, it's only about a 90-degree turn from 11 feet to infinity. And let me explain to you, infinity at 800 millimeter is hundreds of yards away. So if you're trying to focus on an object that's 100 feet away, you move this lens just that much and you're 50 feet off the mark. It's really hard to get precision focus. And every time you touch the lens, it's bouncing around in your viewfinder. It's a nightmare to get sharp focus with this lens, even taking your time. So forget about sports. It's not happening. Wildlife and birding, maybe. You can be far enough away where you're not disturbing the animal, and the animal might just be, poking along, minding its own business, and you might have time to set the shot up. I'm going to do some more work with this and see if I can get anything decent in like nature type photos. I know I'm going to be able to use that lens for compression architecture, going downtown, getting up at a high place, and getting those compressed, layers of architecture, layers of buildings. It can be fun. It's a fun sort of urban study, and I like that kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking that lens is going to be good for. I can put it on a tripod. I can use a remote release, so I'm not touching the camera, and I can probably get some really, really good shots. I am going to show some photos because it actually is capable of making decent photos. And again, post is important. I had to punch up the contrast using highlight and shadow controls, and I even played with the sharpness on the fine edge of sharpness. The depth of field is real shallow, and you can kind of work it and really get some decent results. And I'll show you some pictures here. Take a look at these photos right here. Okay, so this first picture is just a shot of one of the cameras back on a shelf behind me. And so I was tripod mounted. I took my time. I got the best focus I could. And again, it's pretty contrasty shot only because in Lightroom, I used some of the tools controlling highlights and shadows in contrast to kind of bring it up a little bit. And I also masked off several areas within the actual plane of focus and applied some additional texture to make it just a little sharper. And so it makes for a decent image when you do that. Again, that was just a test shot, indoors, not a practical use for this lens, but just to show you that the lens is capable with a little help in post to make really decent images. So this next shot, I wanted to just go outside. Now, I live in Western Washington State. In the wintertime, if it's cloudy, it is dark, like, dusk levels of light. So I had to punch the ISO up on this to 25,600, which is not an ISO we really ever want to work at. But I handheld the lens. This is some spiky little bush that my wife's got planted out in the front yard. And I was about maybe 12, 13 feet away from it. So near the minimum focusing distance. And really, I didn't apply any texture, no sharpening. This was straight out of the camera. Again, I had to punch up the contrast a little bit because this lens really has crappy contrast. There's no sugarcoating it. So I had to do that a little bit. And I had to bring up the exposure by about a stop. I wanted a 1/1600th of a second shutter speed, and to get that, even at 25,600, I had to underexpose it by about a stop to get that shutter speed. But it is sharp, and there is no camera shake. IBIS was on. And then the last shot here, this is one I missed. So I'm showing you a failure. I missed the focus. When I first looked at it, I thought I had camera shake. And then I realized there's no way I had camera shake. It was 1/4000th of a second. So on this shot, I used my M6 Mark II and a Metabone speed booster. So the lens was a 568 f5.6. And then, of course, with a crop factor camera, that basically shoots like a 900. And so that bird was far away. I wasn't bothering. It was just sitting there, minding its own business. It wasn't moving around. I just missed the focus because it was bouncing around in the viewfinder. It was really hard to get a good sharp focus, and I couldn't use the magnify tool because that just made it worse. So here's one where I missed. This is why this lens would be really almost impossible for sports, because this bird was just sitting there, minding its own business, just sitting there. And I missed the focus. There is a plane of sharp focus on one of the branches there just underneath the bird, and that was sharp. So this is a tough lens to manipulate. There's no doubt of that. So I think the lens is salvageable. I paid $125 for that lens. I actually was watching it on eBay, and the guy made me an offer. I think he was asking $175 or $165, and he just made me an offer. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, will you take it for $125?" And I thought to myself, yeah, he doesn't have the hood, and he doesn't have a T-mount, but I already have a T-mount. I'm a telescope guy. I got T-mounts. So I wasn't worried about that. And then I found a guy for $20. I got a 105 millimeter deep lens shade, and it's an appropriate depth for that lens. So that should be here at the end of the week. So I was able to get some decent shots with it. I think it's worth anything under $200. It's probably worth it. And honestly, if you buy it and you can't get sharp photos, which wouldn't surprise me, it's hard to get sharp images with it. It's hard to focus. The vibration is nuts on that lens. It's just hard. You might buy one and go, God, I can't get a good shot with this. Well, just put it on eBay. Someone else will buy it from you. If you pay less than $200, you'll probably get most of your money back. Or maybe you don't get it all back, but, so you rented it. It's what's nice about these used lenses. You can usually recover most of your money if you make a mistake and it's not the right lens for you. There's a high probability that you're not going to like the lens. But there's also a reasonable chance that you might find some usefulness for an 800 f8 lens. It's pretty cool. Hey, Photo Fair is a ways out, guys. April 2nd is the next show at the Newark Pavilion in Newark, California. We have the entire 2022 schedule on photofair.com. You can see links to our videos. You'll see reports from Koof Camera on cameras and lenses and so on. And you might take a look at the last video I did, link down below, about Lightroom and doing, they've now got masking brushes where you can kind of apply a local sharpen to the fine edge of focus. That's really ideal on a lens like this. And take a look at that. It might be helpful for you. In the meantime, we look forward to seeing you at the Photo Fair shows and right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.